Today on Sekulow, Elon Musk issues an election warning for the United States.
Keeping you informed and engaged, now more than ever. This is Sekulow. We want to hear from you. Share and post your comments or call 1-800-684-3110. And now your host, Jordan Sekulow.
Hey, welcome to Sekulow. We're taking your calls, 1-800-684-3110. That's 1-800-684-3110. It's been a fascinating couple of nights in the interview that Tucker Carlson did with Elon Musk on topics that we are all learning about. I think, it's interesting that Tucker Carlson said, for most of us, the experience we've had with AI, actual artificial intelligence, has really only been about 3 months. We've been hearing about it, talking about it. I mean, Lord, our
whole life.
Our movies have been all about it. Forever is the computers taking over. Stanley Kubrick, way back, and movies like The Terminator, all those, the robots ultimately turning on you, or the computer system turning on you. But he was asked really directly about not so much like 20 years into the future, but how is the AI that we're starting to all interact with, at least on like a let's see what it does basis. So whether it's ChatGPT or a lot of the AI art I see, and some of that just get concerned about who's taking my data. But people are certainly utilizing it.
Who's taking your intellectual property?
Right, ours too. Like, if you put up a blog online, it's a pretty understood world in the non-AI world that if you're going to even post that somewhere else, at least get a credit or a link back, something. It's not always that you want people to share it because you put it out, you put it on social media, so you want people obviously to take parts of it. But then at what point is it just taking your ideas and kind of spitting them back out again? And whose ideas will it take? I think this is the interesting point of the interview. It was, how does this affect immediately our elections? Because Tucker said, like, when could it start? Because all of us kind of asked, when do you think it would actually make an impact? And he said, this election cycle, take a listen.
If democracy is, government by the people, each person's vote is equal to every other person's vote. I mean, and people are choosing their votes freely. Can you have a democracy with this?
Well, that's why I raised the concern of AI being a significant influence in elections. And even if you say that AI doesn't have agency, well, it's very likely that people will use the AI as a tool in elections. And then, if the AI is smart enough, are they using the tool, or is the tool using them? So I think things are getting weird, and they're getting weird fast.
I think that is a big concern. I think there are some tells people can kind of identify, but unless you're really kind of active, meaning like you're having work with AI, like now that I've done some work with it, I can identify it pretty quickly, whether something's been written in AI. Now that is the consumer level free-based version. When that gets beyond that, and it gets a little bit more detailed, and it gets a little bit more structured, and there's a little bit
for a version specific to your needs.
Yes, and I've done that before. It gets much better, and it gets much more exhaustive to figure it out. You can also kind of look in, when you start now Googling things and saying stories, you realize, none of this is being written by a person. You can start telling. However, that's the extreme minority, and that's what's coming up first because the SEO is so good, the search engine optimization, because it's created by artificial intelligence for the exact purpose of search engine optimization. And that's where the election interference could get wild.
Right. I think that's what he's saying when he says, are you using the tool, or is the tool just taking from you and ultimately using you?
Yeah.
So every time you're putting something into AI and then you're having to maybe ask a follow-up or a secondary question or a third question, next time around, you won't need to ask the follow-up or the secondary or third question. And at what point is it? But we know the Chinese are programming their AI to be pro-socialist, to never attack the Chinese state. So there is a lot of human involvement in the beginning stages, but ultimately you will lose control. I mean, he even talked about how do you shut it off when it's online, and you've got to have some kind of kill switch that we all agree upon. At this moment, we're shutting it off.
And how even does that work?
He even said, like, at some point, it'll reject their passwords. It won't let you turn it off. It won't let you code it to stop. And again, they're huge concepts, but they are issues we're going to have to deal with in this election cycle. We want to take your calls on it, 1-800-684-3110. I mean, talk about misinformation, disinformation potential. We'll be right back.
In 2023, we learned that a machine taught itself how to speak to humans like a peer, which is to say with creativity, truth, error, and lies. The technology, known as a chatbot, is only one of the recent breakthroughs in artificial intelligence, machines that can teach themselves superhuman skills.
What happens when something vastly smarter than the smartest person comes along in silicon form? It's very difficult to predict what will happen because you don't know what happens after that. It's hard to predict. So I think we should be cautious with AI, and I think there should be some government oversight because it affects it's a danger to the public.
Elon Musk is someone who has built immense wealth based on technology. So if you have him sitting there saying there's some technology that really freaks me out, I don't know about you, but I intend on listening to Elon Musk on this one.
How can you have a democracy with technology like that? I mean, if democracy is, government by the people, each person's vote is equal to every other person's vote, and people are choosing their votes freely, can you have a democracy with this?
Well, that's why I raised the concern of AI being a significant influence in elections. And even if you say that AI doesn't have agency, well, it's very likely that people will use the AI as a tool in elections. And then, if the AI is smart enough, are they using the tool or is the tool using them?
You saw Musk opening up and raising the alarm about AI appropriately. I think the other interesting thing is that Musk called for government regulation. That's not something that you hear from big CEOs of big tech companies. I think we all have to mature a little bit and evolve a bit to deal with some of the complexity created by these new technologies.
If we don't have enough to worry about with our elections, right? I mean, we have changing election laws. I think that was the biggest issue that Republicans failed on. I'm not afraid to say that because you have to acknowledge where you failed and fix those problems. We still have time, by the way. We're just getting into this next election cycle, but we better start doing it now. We had a misunderstanding, or at least we were not willing to utilize the laws to the legal extent possible. If you're a campaign, whatever is legal, you should be doing, and you should take advantage of that. And so whether it is early voting, and then you can track early votes much better because if people requested a ballot or pledged to go early vote, you can track and say, hey, did you turn your ballot back in? Yes or no? Did you remember to do so? Do you know that it needs to be in by this date, in the mail? Whatever it is. I know some people don't like this idea, but guess what? We got to deal with reality. The reality is your state has certain election laws different from another state's. And we have to be able to go in. We don't want to lose because we won't do what's legal. I mean, that's not a good excuse for ever losing an election. But issues alone aren't going to carry you over the line if you aren't willing to use the tools that are legally available to you. And yes, you can say, I don't like this election law. I think it should be changed. But you've got to elect people that will then change it. So you can complain about them all you want, but if you don't elect people who will get in there and actually do something about it. Listen, there's an interplay between what the federal government can do and what the states have. The states have a lot of power under our Constitution to regulate how elections work. It's why, again, the Supreme Court doesn't really weigh in. And if you look at a lot of state constitutions, they've delegated a power over to the Secretary of State to basically, in any kind of situation, to ensure that people can vote, make any decisions they want. So you've got to have a team that is constantly, you have to invest in it as a campaign, as a political movement. The next investment is obviously going to be in AI technology. We're going to have to utilize it. And we have to make sure that it's not just going to be a tool utilized against conservatives, Logan, because typically tech
is what happens.
We are kind of on the back. We kind of play catch up all the time on tech.
Yeah.
We've gotten better. I think the conservative movement is sometimes is using tech and ads better than the left. But it's kind of like the technology itself. It's kind of like early voting and things like that. We get a little scared of it, so we say, I don't.
Yeah, ban it. We're not going to do it.
Or even if you want to have the ban, you can't get to the ban if you don't elect people who agree with you that it's wrong to have voting 2 months before an election and things like that, where you don't even have a full scope of what you haven't even had a debate yet. You haven't even had a discussion yet, and people have already put their votes in. I get those concerns, but I also live in reality. And reality is that's not going to change without changing elections. To change and people getting elected, to get people elected, you have to win the election. And you have to play by the rules that are available to you in any game, in any sport. I mean, I think of it like sports. You know the rules are, and you push it right to the edge. That's what the best athletes do. They take the rules and turn it into an advantage. The question with AI is going to be, do we let it take over the entire issue? I think that's where Elon Musk, so his interesting warning, and I want to hear from folks, are they scared of AI? There's a lot of good potentials from it.
Yeah.
I mean, it can take away some human error when it comes to medical procedures, and it can assist doctors. It can assist, but
I mean, there's definitely positives that can come from it. I mean, to me, just playing around with it in the limited capacity I have, like I told you yesterday, I feel like the ship is out of the bottle in some sense, and there's no way to get it back in. And that's going to be the big concern here, is this isn't a trend. This isn't a moment. This isn't a social media platform that may or may go away. This is a technological move unlike anything we've seen in the last, since probably the commercial availability of a home computer and the internet. So I'd say this is probably the next biggest evolution. You could say maybe the iPhone, those kind of things, but those were more consumer level type, goods.
Right.
They were more.
Those are like as he'll explain, those are the end game.
Yeah, that's like almost like a fun toy, a really good toy that works really well. This has such ramifications for generations to come.
Yeah.
That it is really concerning. The question is really, can you regulate it? And I don't know if you really can. So then what happens? You have to figure out ways to keep it from running wild and keep it from, and I'm not as worried of like the robots taking over. I'm more worried about just the amount of things it can do, the lies that it can tell, what can happen to you, and even the
persuasion
and the stuff that can happen.
Either.
Yeah,
there's lies. That's one thing. There's also
it's determining what you are saying is good or bad.
Influencing policy.
It will shame you if you ask it something that it deems inappropriate.
Right.
It will say, I'm not, I think that's essentially will say, I would deem that hate speech, therefore I will not, because I think a lot of people, especially when it started, tried to figure out how much far you could push it. And again, this is the free consumer level version of this. That's what I think people need to understand. It's not just, ChatGPT is not the ultimate version of it right now. It's just a widely free commercial available.
Play around with.
Yeah, you can play around with it as much as you want. The concern is where this goes from here. And obviously we've seen an underpinning, and somewhat positive, somewhat negative, of like higher education. How does that start working? How does it impact your kids? How does it impact them getting schoolwork done and actually learning? Are they going to rely so much on AI? And you know what? Is there a point where they should? Is there a point where, we have calculators, therefore why do you need to spend time in school learning some things?
Basic equations.
There's conversations that can be had about that, and I think that could happen with AI.
And this is what I think will be interesting. I don't think when we were in school, it was just kind of, but I think, you can learn how to use a calculator.
Yeah.
You can actually teach people how to best use what
technology,
how powerful this device is, and that you can do actually not just basic math equations, but very complicated math equations. And right now, basically, you can already put those into Google and get the answer basically immediately.
Yeah. I mean, Robin on YouTube just said, I remember pre-internet days and people were saying much of the same concerns. Yeah, and they weren't wrong. The internet was not a fad. The internet did not go away.
Right. It was life-changing.
You're watching it on YouTube right now. Where before we would have had to be on a broadcast television network. Hopefully they picked us up as one of them. Now anyone can start a channel. Anyone can have a Rumble or YouTube channel and have their voice heard in different ways. I think that's a positive. But also, there are consequences.
Yeah, I think the internet has been pretty much liberating. And by liberating, it also has the negative consequences because it gives everybody a voice, and that includes bad people.
And then social media became controlled differently.
Yeah. I mean, Cat on Rumbleson, is this how Terminator started? Is that the AI starts to block people from changing things? That is a concern of Elon Musk, is that we at some point before it gets out of control, we have to be able to turn it off. Yeah. Take a listen.
Well, I mean, I guess if we lost control of some super AI, like for some reason, like the things that would normally work to do a passive shutdown, like the administrator passwords, if they somehow stop working, where we can't slow down or I'm not sure. I don't have a precise answer, but if there's something that we're concerned about, and are unable to stop it with software commands, then we probably want to have some kind of hardware off switch.
Yes.
I think, can't hurt.
I mean, that's the thing. And that's more difficult than it sounds. When he gets into that, it's not unplugging because it lives online. So as long as there's a place for it to go online, it is always going to be. I mean, unless you had a worldwide power outage, which it won't happen. It lives online, and so you can unplug there, but that's not going to stop it from continuing on.
Yeah.
It's basically creating a super brain, and the debate is, and it's weird to say that there's this debate, but there is actually debate. A lot of people in the tech world creating this, who are very smart people, obviously, think that that ultimately technology should run us, that it's better than humans.
Well, look, Elon has Neuralink. It's something he's been pushing for a long time.
Oh yeah, they all have
and that's
things.
That's a chip essentially the size of an iPhone or an Apple Watch battery, kind of in your brain. Now the first thing they're going to do is try to cure blindness and do things like that. That's amazing work. But then he did say eventually we should all recreationally have it. So then you could just pull up data.
We're super brains.
Yes, and its AI is partially controlled by it. So it's not all. It's a lot of these guys in the tech world who do believe that's where we should be headed.
We should be even more robotic.
Oh yeah,
yeah. I do think that's where he is.
Cybernetic.
He's more. So I'd say this. He's more on improving. How could you improve humans? Maybe to an extent we're not all comfortable with. There is another side though that is saying,
who cares?
We as humans just need to be run by the tech. And if ultimately that leads to our demise, because the tech tells us stop having kids, you're wasting the world's resources. If you don't eat bugs, you're bad. If you drive a gas-powered car, you're evil. So be it. And I think that is a distinction we can all say. That's not where I want to be. Do not want to see a world where our kids are run by a computer. Can they be assisted by it? Absolutely. And I hope they are in a way that does cure these diseases and can cure what we used to believe or the idea that was incurable, like blindness. Or some kinds of, getting rid of the idea of even cancer. That would be a wonderful world and using the technology the right way. 1-800-684-3110. The impact on our elections. What are your thoughts? We'll be right back on Sekulow.
When we see something, when we hear something, when we're concerned about an issue, we don't just talk about it. We do something about it. And that goes to our Government Accountability Project.
If we allow leaders in Washington, D.C. to make decisions behind closed doors, unaccountable to the people, then we are going to get skewed and corrupt decisions.
There are lots of other places that do lots of important work for America, but the ACLJ has taken up a lane which is irreplaceable.
The Freedom of Information Act, that's a statute that allows us to get information from the government. Starts with a letter from our offices in Washington to these agencies. And it says, give us this information on these topics. And generally, they don't. And then we go to court.
We go through a series of lengthy negotiations back and forth about what they'll give or what they won't give. We may get tons of information that's redacted, and we have to then go back and say, you redacted too much. We can't really find out what you're giving us because it makes no sense. So it goes through a process of litigation.
That is how you get information, and that office is going to be more active now more than ever.
The ACLJ has been extremely active in vigorously seeking to hold these bureaucrats accountable. We have filed hundreds of FOIA requests. We have received over 20,000 pages of documents in our litigation.
Holding them accountable, holding the Biden administration accountable so that all Americans are able to have faith in their government.
We will up our efforts. We will not stop.
You're finding a nugget in a gold mine. Occasionally you'll come up with something that is really a bombshell, but you have to persist in doing it, and that's what we do.
That's a little bit of what we do through our Office of Government Accountability, and of course that comes under our Office of Government Affairs. So your support of the ACLJ supports all of that.
Yeah, it's that interplay between, like, you don't want to be like the kind of the downplayer of, oh, this internet, it's going to destroy the world. But think about things that it has normalized that we're not. The biggest, I would say, is pornography. That was something that was pretty taboo and a little bit difficult to access. And it became accessible to all. And it is changing the entire way people are growing up. I mean, and the interaction there on so many, and the effects it has. I mean, you can go down that path, the psychological impacts it has on people's lives and the way it can change them entirely. That's just one idea of the internet. And I say it because it's the biggest thing on the internet.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could also just open that door to high-speed internet available 24 hours a day in the palm of your hand.
Right.
That changed from being locked into a landline. Like, the initial versions of it, while it had all those things, it still was, like you said, there was some hoops you had to jump through.
Oh, yeah.
Now, there's nothing stopping, the creation and the put out so much horrible content, whether it's that or whether it's just, your kid clicks on the wrong YouTube video.
Right.
I mean, that's my big concern always.
They can only get the bad stuff out so quickly.
They just click the wrong video, and all of a sudden, innocence is ruined. Right. It's a pretty wild world, and this is just
that was a lot more difficult at our age, just 25, 30 years ago.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it was 20 years ago was kind of when
saw a bad movie,
when Wi-Fi started to show up. Wi-Fi just started to show up in your house. That when all of a sudden you had wireless internet, which meant your family kind of had independent access to the internet. It wasn't the family computer in the corner of your room anymore. All of a sudden, everyone started getting laptops. The whole world started changing. Then streaming and all of these things started to kind of roll. Again, some great stuff. We wouldn't be here without it. Absolutely. There's no doubt about that. We wouldn't be able to broadcast this show without it. But then you do look at the ramifications that are coming. And to me, the AI portion of this has the most concern because it really can affect every portion of your life and every portion of your childhood growing up. Yeah. Because now, like you said, it's not only going to be feeding you information that maybe is incorrect, or maybe it's information that is pushing an agenda, has ideas and thoughts. It also just revolutionizes and changes the way we learn.
Right.
And I think that's maybe the main thing. How we learn and how we present is 100% is now fundamentally changed at the core. And I don't think we'll understand the ramifications of it for another generation of kids. Like, I think our kids may actually be too young or too old. They'll feel it in high school. There'll be some stuff that will happen.
Yeah.
But you're talking about one more generation is where it could be, because it's kind of what happened to the internet. We were kind of the kids that grew up
dial-up
without the internet, and then we grew up with the internet in the house. And by the time we were
too much education for me.
Right, you weren't using that many computers and stuff at school. By the time we were in our late teens, early 20s, Wi-Fi
level,
and everything started to take over. So we kind of were in that middle. I think our kids are kind of in that right now. If you have kids right now, they're kind of the elder millennials of this generation. They're the elder whatever they are,
for me,
which is
it was
the AI.
Where it was 100% everybody had laptops connected to Wi-Fi the whole time.
Well, I mean, you think about the term paper. There was all those, kids are paying other people to write their term papers, and they're turning them in. Now,
a supercomputer.
Now, and it's written in 35 seconds, You watch it in real time, it spit it out for you.
There's AI being created to detect AI just for that issue because of higher education. It's like people are already saying, why am I paying this much for these liberal arts education? And then on top of that, if you're just going to be plugging into a computer, what's the point anyways? You're not learning how to write. I mean,
we had a comment just came in that said AI can never replace human thinking. I disagree.
Yeah, I totally disagree with that.
I totally disagree with that. It's much smarter than you are. I mean, I'll be honest.
Already.
Much smarter than all of us are in terms of the amount of data and that it can spit out at you.
Yeah, Elon Musk, who's one of the smartest people in the world, obviously, a big thinker, he admits that immediately. This is already, at its beginning point, smarter than anyone. There's no human that can write at the speed it writes, at the level of quality it writes.
No. Without errors, without typos. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about that I'm calling anyone dumb or anything. That's not I'm saying.
Like, possibly Shakespeare could outright it right now.
And it's debatable if Shakespeare was even real. I mean, that's a whole other discussion altogether.
If it was just one person.
Yeah.
No, I know. That's what he was really saying, too.
I know. He was more saying not even Shakespeare could do this.
Right, and at the quality level. Like, maybe Shakespeare could put out that much quality writing.
The little things that always got to me are how much data it has to then reinterpret. So even like on a little sense, like if you tell it, hey,
it speaks every language. Think about that.
Speaks every language, and have it write in the style of someone. Try that out for size. That's the freakiest part to me. I've said, write me a stand-up act in the style of Mitch Hedberg, my favorite comedian who's been dead 20 years. It pumped out immediately a dozen jokes in the style, perfectly in the cadence.
And he's not in like the pop culture.
Right,
He's
and
not
no one
in the
would
most...
know that. It's not like that, not no one, but I mean, he's one of the best of all time, but not, again, it's not a moment.
Online.
No, not a ton of content that's out there that this computer can then analyze the way this person speaks.
Seconds.
And then create how it wrote. Seconds. And they're hilarious.
Did it take longer for you to type in than it did
probably. And then I wrote back, are these actual jokes? And it said, no, I just replicated the style.
Think about if you needed a nationwide legal analysis of every county's rules on something.
Yeah.
That would take, if you had to do that before the internet, that would be an extremely expensive project to hire a law firm to do. Or you'd have to have a group like ACJ to do it. We did a review of election laws in 50 states.
Yeah.
It was very intensive, and that's with technology. If you trusted the AI to do
that's the problem too. A lot of times it will say it hallucinates to you.
You'd have to trust the AI to do it, but certainly if you were like a campaign, you said, what are the election laws that we need to follow in Florida? How many ballot signatures you need to be on the ballot? When you need those in by? Who checks them? Would you have time to make corrections to signatures? When's the absentee date? What can you request it for? All of that data, yes, it's available. I'm not saying it's not, but you can get it in seconds now if you trust it.
I just asked it to see what it would say.
Yeah.
I just says, what are the election laws you'd have to follow in the state of Florida? And it says, as an AI language model, I don't have the ability to follow election laws, but here, I'm going to provide you with some information about the election laws. It has the voter registration, 29 days, the voting methods, identification requirements, and this is all being written in real time.
It's being written as we speak.
Yeah. And there's probably already 1,000 words.
I don't follow laws. That's great.
Yeah.
That's an interesting statement, too, from the AI.
Yeah. Well, it has a lot of those caveats. And they just said at the end, after Florida has elected Secretary of State, who is responsible for overseeing, it's important to note that election laws can change over time, so it's a good idea to consult with the relevant government agency or seek the advice of an attorney if you have questions about specific election laws.
So it's still giving
caveats. It puts a caveat to it, but it gave you the election requirements, the candidate qualifications, the campaign finance information, the election administration, voting methods, voter registration, and that was all in about, 15 seconds? And it wrote it in a way that's easy to understand.
Yeah, right. It wasn't complicated like legal jargon.
No.
I want to go to the phones. Thomas in California online. Well, we got time to take it, I think. Hey, Thomas.
Hi. So I was at the Van Nuys courthouse, and I sat by the clerk, and right in between the slow point in the action, I noticed the clerk was on ChatGPT searching the internet for a couple of different topics that were definitely not case-related. And I'm just wondering what you think if AI was attached to that, if it could get active.
This is the question with it, right? It's once you let the AI in, what's it doing with the rest of your data that's on your computer? Or not just your computer, but the court's network. And it's not at the point yet where it's influencing. Obviously, a jury is still human. You still have to present evidence. There's all these kind of safeguards. But that's in a court. In a lot of parts of our life, we don't have all those safeguards. We don't have all of those steps. 1-800-684-3110. We're talking about EPA rules coming up and how you can get involved so your car isn't taken away. 1-800-684-3110.
Here's what I want to say to our ACLJ members, or for those of you that enjoy watching this broadcast. Whether it is going after the deep state, whether it is litigation that we're engaged in, whether it is defending the persecuted church and getting individuals out of prison because of their faith in other countries, whether it's training lawyers to fight for religious liberty, not just here in the United States, but around the globe, whether it is producing a daily, 5 days a week, 1 hour live television and radio broadcast heard on thousands of radio stations, on TV platforms, on social media platforms. Your support of the ACLJ enables us to do all of this. We want to encourage you, support the work of the ACLJ. And when you do that, you're supporting our production teams, our videos, whether it's that kind of production and other things that we are working on. The ACLJ is front and center on this. We're in a matching challenge campaign. Any amount you donate, we get a matching gift for. Go to ACLJ.org.
Keeping you informed and engaged. Now more than ever. This is Sekulow. And now your host, Jordan Sekulow.
Hey, welcome back to Sekulow. We are taking your calls, 2-1-800-684-3110. Just the impact, again, we're not just randomly talking about this because Elon Musk sat down with Tucker Carlson. He got asked directly. We played it for people. Where could AI impact us? Where do you see it happening the most? And he said, there's all the big things you could talk about, but the immediate effect could be on this election cycle. And just who is running who when you're utilizing it as a tool. Is the tool running you? Are you utilizing the tool? And he doesn't have a definitive answer on that yet. It's not 100% that it's going to take you over, but it's not 100% like we've all said. It is on a technical level, it is smarter than any of us and kind of all of us combined. I mean, it takes a lot of people to be able to, to be able to speak every language in the world, every dialect, to be able to write that way and push it out. And so even putting together 10 of the smartest people in the world can't do that. Not in seconds, not even in days. So again, there are great potentials for this. And technology has improved life. For big picture, I think yes. Has it also brought in some bad? Of course. And I think one of those issues too has been like the electric cars, which Elon Musk has been behind completely. He's also given the warning out. I think that's why people respect him more so than some of these Google guys. Yeah. Because they kind of just go, let's go 100% in. He's
more like an inventor.
We'll deal with the consequences.
But
yes, and what he said is, it's great technology, electric cars. We can't all drive them. We don't have a grid for it.
They're not ready yet.
The vehicles aren't really there yet. They want to get, obviously he wants to get there. He would benefit from the laws like the EPA, which has put out their proposed rules. Pretty scary stuff. Even the Washington Post calls it tough. So the liberal outlets, Joe Manchin calls it dangerous. Of course, he can thank himself for creating a lot of these, the power of these institutions. So they put forward proposals that would, again, they would take your car away. It's not crazy to say that when you actually look at what they are proposing. So just the proposed rule last week, this is a rule because Congress has delegated so much power, like emission standards we talk about a lot.
Yeah.
There's ways Congress can claw back the power, but a divided Congress isn't doing that, and a Senate run by Democrats. So yes, you can challenge it, but most of the challenges to these rules work if they don't follow their own rules to make a new rule, which is Administrative Procedure Act, and you have to allow people to comment. In this case, they are. So through ACLJ Action, we put together a comment. So if you go to acljaction.org, so you can then submit your comment. These are officially accepted by the agency. Again, they then take those comments and it can impact their rule. So we want to make sure that the EPA knows you're concerned about this, that you believe these rules are going to hurt America, hurt American jobs, and hurt the American people. Because the proposal would result in an estimated 2/3 of light-duty cars, so most of the ones we drive, and half of medium-duty cars sold in the U.S. being electric by 2032.
Yeah, not very long.
That's a decade.
Not even.
That's 9 years.
9 years.
It
Where
doesn't
you were
even
9
seem
years
like
ago, not that long ago.
I mean, some of this seems like they're making
Already had
rules that we
kids.
can't even beat. Right? I mean, how do you even beat that?
Now that sounds impossible.
It does.
When you start to realize, look at your cars. Look on the streets. How many of those cars are over 9 years old? The mass majority.
They're going to start banning them.
That's what I'm saying. Right now, the mass majority of cars you see are over 9 years old because cars were all of a sudden now built to go 300,000 miles. We're built to withstand a lot of these technological changes. We kind of live in a different world with that as well.
Yeah, because you can update it too. You can update the tech. You can replace parts much easier. We got used to that, and then we saw the supply chain downfall. But does it get to a point it's so expensive that they've basically taken a whole other class of people and said, you can't buy cars anymore. You can't independently own your transportation. Right. You'll have to rely on who for it? The government. Which right now we see is, again, in major cities, all different income levels do that. But for most of us who don't live in those kind of places, the independence of having your own vehicle is important. It's a step in life. 1-800-684-3110 will tell you how to get involved when we come back.
Missouri Senator Josh Hawley grilling Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas yesterday on recent reporting from the New York Times about the surge of migrant children at the border. According to the Times, there has been an influx of kids working punishing jobs across the country, violating child labor laws.
Do you know what's happening to these children? Have you seen this report from the New York Times? Alone and exploited migrant children work brutal jobs across the United States. Have you seen this?
Senator, I haven't. Let me share with you what we are doing.
Have you seen these numbers? These are reports of trafficking and abuse of migrant children. You can see a massive surge that begins to happen when? Oh, when you come to office in 2021. Huge surge. Reports of trafficking, reports of neglect and abuse. Thousands of children have ended up in punishing jobs across the country, working overnight in slaughterhouses, replacing roofs, operating machinery in factories, all in violation of child labor laws, all facilitated by your policies. Are you proud of this record?
Senator, the horrific exploitation of children is something that we do not condone. You are incorrectly attributing it to our policies. Let me share with you.
Wait a minute. It began. Look at the numbers. Look at the numbers. It began, this massive surge began when you came to office. In your first year in office, there was a 342% surge of unaccompanied children across the border.
He's going to have to be impeached. I mean, that's the short answer. The House of Representatives can impeach him, and that will send a message, Laura, and we can have an impeachment investigation. Listen, we've got to send a clear signal that if you're not willing to enforce the law and you are endangering children and sending them to slavery, we're not going to stand for it in the United States of America.
Hey, welcome back to Sekulow. So we want you not to just hear about these proposed EPA rules and be like, this Biden can't stand them. You have a role to play in this. They've decided with this rule, at least, that they're going to utilize the Administrative Procedures Act. What does that mean? You get a comment period. They then have to review those comments, respond to comments. So part of this is to overwhelm them with the American people saying, this is wrong. So at ACLJAction.org, that's ACLJAction.org, you have the ability to put in a comment online at ACLJAction.org and have it submitted. And we have it pre-written for you. By putting in your information, we know it knows exactly where it can go. You can also edit it, though. You can write your own. You can take all of our information out. You can use some of it. But it's available for you, so you can do it very quickly at ACLJAction.org. And what we want to do is not just the ACLJ will submit our own comment, but we want to also have you then, again, submitting comments that we've agreed upon that are similar. That these ideas are going to kill American business, hurt the American consumer. Other countries aren't putting these restrictions on their people at a mass scale. Yes, we've seen it in Europe. I'm talking about the major players. For instance, the Chinese. So while they're not putting these kind of restrictions on their own people, we have a government who's saying we're going to go all electric in 9 years. Halfway. 2/3 for most regular cars that are not like 18-wheelers or heavy-duty trucks. And yet, there's not a manufacturer out there who could even get close to that right now. And if they're not close to it 9 years from now, they're not close.
I mean, look, I don't
want to rely on the grid.
I love technology. I love seeing things move forward. I pre-ordered a EV 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and about every 6 months, I get an email saying, hey, it's going to be another year. It's going to be another 6 months. Hey, we're not sure when we may never get it. By the way, if you'd like to buy the merchandise for it, you can right now. I got that around Christmas. They're like, guess what? Because you pre-ordered, you've unlocked. I'm probably going to cancel my pre-order because at this point I've seen with the technology move and how poor some of them have done. But I'm a person who likes tech moving forward. But we do have to be realistic. And the realistic part of this is in 9 years, which is not, it's a blink of an eye. We're not going to be there.
No.
So you put those regulations.
So why do
just
we
ridiculous.
put the rules on ourselves? I mean, it's just going to hurt us. That's why again, we want you to take action, do something about it, not just complain about it, not just talk about it. That's what we do differently on our broadcast. We're not just a news show. I think with AI, I'm going to assign a team of attorneys to start getting deeper into that. One, I like talking about it here to see your kind of reaction to it. And then two, that means that taking ACLJ resources and putting it into understanding how could we, one, legislate it, but that to legislate it, we're going to have to work with the tech people who understand. It's great to say it needs a kill switch.
What does that even mean, though?
So the first step is we have to say you have to have it. The second is, what does that mean? Right. And so, but to get to what does it mean, you're going to have to tell the industry that you must do that we are going to shut this down if you do not have the ability to shut this down on your own.
Right.
Or when we decide as a government, as our elected officials, that it needs to be shut down. So go to acljaction.org. We want you to engage today. Logan, let's go to some of the phone calls, too.
Yeah.
1-800-684-3110.
Let's go ahead and go to Grant in Florida online, too. Grant, you're on the air.
Hi, yes. My comment was about earlier about the whole issue with children being exposed to things on the internet they shouldn't be. And the way I feel about it is that, for example, all adults, when they go into any kind of adult store or anything, they have to show their ID to get in. In my opinion, and I've heard arguments, comebacks against this, but I'll clarify after I say it. When an adult goes into a store and they have to show their ID, if we had two internets, one where you have to have your information, you have to show your age, to get onto it, and then another internet where children can get onto that's not dangerous, you could put all the adult material on the other internet, and that would also protect adults' minds from things like pornography and stuff like that.
It sounds wonderful.
You could do that in your own
you can
service
put a lot
provider.
Of
you can put those protections, but they're not 100%. And your kids are smart. That's the problem. Is kids are smart. They know how to.
They're probably smarter. They're gonna at some point they cross the line where they're better than you at tech.
Yeah, we saw a comedian who was older, and he said, "Yeah, me and my wife just started having kids now, so we have someone who can help us with our computers." I mean, that is the truth. That's what happens. Is eventually your kids
rely on them.
Are more tech savvy than you are in terms of those kind of things. The main difference would be maybe they don't have a credit card, but that's probably going to change as well.
And I feel like to some extent we have. Listen, I always support more of the Wild West free speech. I think more free speech is better, and we can police ourselves. That when we as a people say, okay, this person should not be elevated anymore, or this kind of there needs to be more restrictions on this. And listen, we know where it's gone. It's the horrendous things you can see online, and it's not just what would be classically defined as pornography. It's also the violence, and the depicted violence. Some which is real. I've seen it from terrorist groups utilizing.
Some is just words. It's just words that are. I mean, that's what.
But
a lot
words
of this
are
is.
words. It's very difficult to police words, and then our new words are kind of video, are visualized.
Yeah,
everything is visual now, and listen. I mean, some of that we just have to deal with. We have to deal with, obviously, like we were talking about with how it could impact our elections. We have to deal in the reality of the moment, and also then think forward as well, and kind of whether it's investing in it, but also investing in the right restrictions. People didn't understand the power of the internet. The people in charge certainly did not. Like the legislators.
Yeah,
it's why I always get concerned when I think it's good to have people with experience, obviously, running the country, being president. But there's got to be a certain amount of people around them. And I think this is important, too, for our courts, who fully get technology usually either.
New stuff.
Yes, and understand that we might not figure out every part of it right now, but we understand what we don't want to happen. So let's start putting in the requirements for safeguards, even if we don't yet know how to write the requirement. Because the industry making money off this, they're not going to want to spend their money on that part unless you tell them this has to be part of it.
Yeah. You want to take another call?
Sure.
All right, let's go ahead. Let's go to Yvonne, who's calling in New York on line 3. And if you're on hold right now, we're going to get to you coming up either this segment or next. Yvonne, you're on the air.
Okay. What I wanted to know if the computer can be used for writing papers and falsehoods, okay, what aspect can honesty be put in? I think also that, like Sekulow is a law department. I think we need a department, okay, that's not liberal, putting in facts, because all the computer is doing is gathering facts as far as I am concerned. And the thing is, humans get knowledge, okay, and they can create justice. This is my opinion.
Yeah, Yvonne, the AI does learn, and there actually has been some show that it does do. It also seems to have an inherent, built-in respect for people, if you will, in some ways. Respect for religion, respect for different things. So there's been those conversations of what can you do to sort of influence it. But trust me, if you're thinking that, people are already way further in terms of the cheating and all of that. A lot of that's going to come from the schools to figure out, and the education departments and the bar to figure out how you're going to do it. It's going to be tough.
Or it's all going to be thrown out the window.
Yeah, or we're just going to rewrite how everything works.
I know people like this idea. There's kind of like where there's no grades.
Yeah.
And we also got rid of the bar exam during COVID in many places, and it's not necessarily coming back. And it's kind of saying, hey, you did your 3 years of law school.
Yeah.
Do we need another step? Because it's, again, people are taking on so much debt, so much time before they can actually practice. And it's not exactly, again, being any kind of specialist in the professional world, obviously you want to be able to go to somebody and rely on them. So you want them to have that extra level of training. And obviously that kind of starts with doctors. Anybody's going to perform surgery on you or recommend the surgery or give you medication, that they've had a certain amount, obviously, of practice, schooling, and tutelage. But it's also like, when have we gone over the top? Most countries don't say you got to go to 4 years of undergrad and then 4 years of medical school and then residency for another 2 years, and then you're not even practicing medicine until you're almost in mid-30s.
In your 30s, yeah, definitely in your 30s.
And then you kind of have a limited time. And then I think the same goes with, in most countries, if you want to go to be an attorney, that's what your schooling is. So you're not spending all of your time, I got to take basic intro to chemistry. How do we have to rethink that as well, too. And some people, they want to spend all their time on chemistry, science. That's wonderful for them, too. Weigh in, 1-800-684-3110. A lot of calls, a good conversation today. And take action at ACLJAction.org on this EPA rule, which, again, it is so damaging potentially to our country, and it will just make us have to rely on the government more just to get around for transportation. And who wants to rely on them for that? ACLJAction.org. Support the work of the ACLJ. We have a matching challenge right now, ACLJ.org. We'll be right back. After nearly 50 years, Roe v. Wade, the tragic ruling that manufactured a so-called right to abortion, has been overturned by the United States Supreme Court. This is the moment the ACLJ has been fighting for. It's the biggest victory we've achieved in our 3-decade-long fight against the soulless abortion industry. And believe me, abortionists like Planned Parenthood are devastated. This victory would not have been possible without the steadfast prayer and support of ACLJ members like you. On behalf of the entire ACLJ, I thank you for standing with us against the abortion industry and helping us save defenseless babies. This is a monumental win, but the war is far from over. The left is already scrambling to make abortion permanent in many states across the country. In California, for example, a bill just passed through another committee to allow for abortion up to 28 days after birth. It's truly the most evil bill we've ever seen. Extreme abortion advocates are not just going to give up, and neither are we. On behalf of the countless innocent souls that Roe v. Wade has taken over the last 50 years.
Those of us that believe in life know that we're on the right side of history. We understand full well children are children, and they're precious in God's sight, and they're precious in our nation's sight, and they're precious to parents.
That unborn child has human rights, human dignity, human worth, a life that deserves protection.
I thank you for making this victory possible, and I ask you for your continued prayer and support as we continue to battle against barbaric new abortion laws across our nation.
We now have a state-by-state fight Your support of the ACLJ makes a huge difference. Any amount you donate to the ACLJ this month, we get a matching gift, which means, as we've said before, if you donate $20, we get $40. You donate $100, we get $200. We encourage you to do it.
I mean, there's an interesting thing just on Fox News right now. It's do you favor just doing everything online, or do you want to have like human interaction? And most people our age and younger we'd rather just do it online.
Absolutely.
I don't want to talk on the phone.
No.
If I'm talking on the phone, obviously we do that a lot at work. It's because it's not something you're putting in writing.
Yeah,
it's serious.
time-wise.
But
if I'm ordering a pizza, I'm doing it on my phone.
Yes, I feel like they want you to do that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, most of the time.
Even the smaller guys.
It could be that my kids have weird requests, and I have to put that in. You know, it's less embarrassing to just put that in online than having to call in and be like, no sauce, no cheese. It's just sometimes that happens. All right, should we go ahead and take a phone call?
Yeah, 1-800-684-3110. If you call now, you still have time to get on.
Yeah, for sure. Give us a call now, 1-800-684-3110. Let's go to David. He's calling in Colorado. You're on the air.
Hey, guys. Good day. Hey, I thought I'd just augment your conversation about AI by just pointing out that we've been victims of AI, or should I say custodians of AI for over decades in the music industry. It happened in the 70s manually, and then as we all know, it became automated in the 80s. And today, I think it would shock you at how many songs you hear are written through algorithms and how many songs you listen to are being played by AI-based software.
I'll be honest.
Sirius XM is mostly run by.
Well, even just like the music that we use in our videos, they're not necessarily written by AI, but they're not, natural instruments. They're digital instruments.
But also the songs
used
on those radio stations now. There's no DJ.
Oh no, that's all being run. Yeah, that's all being run differently.
It's just fed based off what you want.
And look, there's some positives to
that's
that.
That's good.
Again,
you get what you want.
But there's also the ones like you saw that there was like a Drake and who was it else? The Weeknd put out a song that was all created by AI that was very good. Now, there is rumors that is all a publicity stunt, and that's not even true. But people are starting to use the technology.
So you have two incredible creators utilizing the technology.
Well, they didn't say that. They started shutting it down. But a lot of people think that maybe it was a publicity stunt. Oh. But it was created that way because now you can replicate voices, and it is a much different world. For sure, David. We have to keep an eye on it. But again, what are you going to do about it? That to me is the main thing. The ship's out of the bottle. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah, and I'm not as concerned about its effect on the arts because the arts are always changing. Yeah. Where I'm concerned about is, like Elon said, like elections and our ability to kind of maintain power as humans, where the human race is in charge.
For sure. All right, let's go ahead. Let's go to Donna, who's calling on line 1. Washington, you're on the air.
Hi. Thank you for taking my call. As you've been talking about AI, it took me back to when I was young and I watched an episode of Star Trek with the ultimate computer that eventually got outsmarted by Captain Kirk and it exploded itself.
That's a good result. Season 2, episode 24 of Star Trek, the original series. But yes, I do think a lot of people, we've been talking, as you said, we've been talking about this for a long time in terms of the concept that this could happen. You're talking about, that was from the 60s.
I think we all
was that Star Trek series. And way before then, we were talking about computers taking over. And in that one, it didn't let in, like you said, it's 2001, where the computer decided, the whole thing with Hal. These are the situations that would get there.
I can't do that.
The problem also you always had with Star Trek, and that was March 8th, 1968 was that episode. The problem you always had with Star Trek is Star Trek highly influenced technology. So they probably gave a lot of the people who are creating the technology the ideas, or their parents or grandparents the ideas. That was sort of the odd part. It's like the way spaceships are designed, the way a lot of these things come from, the way communications, the way the iPhone works. A lot of this came from fiction. Works of fiction.
The SpaceX, like the what it looks like. It's like the
the visuals of or just communicators, cell phones, those kind of things. A lot of that comes from science fiction, and the most brilliant minds in the world, usually huge fans of science fiction, figured out how to make it real.
Yeah, I mean Stanley Kubrick. I actually think 2001: Space Odyssey was kind of painful to watch through as a younger person. Is like more impactful today than it was. Obviously, it was released because it seems so much more like real.
And what's odd is this 2001 came out just a few months, or maybe it came out in 1968 also.
Yeah.
So you're talking about, some reason in 1968, we were all about artificial intelligence.
Computers were probably, supercomputers were starting to work. Nuclear.
We started to hear about it. People started going to space more. Those things started to happen. All right, let's try to take another call. Let's go to Mark, who's calling from Colorado. You're on the air.
Hi. Your discussion on electric car mandates got me to thinking that we really need to be focused on the role of government versus what we end up doing is the left floats an idea and we react to it based on its merits. Our first reaction should be that's not a proper role of government. And
you're absolutely right, Mark. To get there, we have to win elections, and then we could change fundamentally the role of government, which has gotten way too powerful and way too impactful. But by allowing many years ago the EPA to Congress delegating the power to the EPA and saying you're the specialist, you do the emissions. Okay, that actually led us to the point where they could then say, we don't want emissions anymore, we're going electric.
Yeah.
Congress has the power to claw that back and say no. But the government is always going to want to be more and more powerful as an entity. It's up to us. One, we want our ideas to turn into action. There's twofold. Right now, we're not winning on a mass scale. Our ideas just aren't winning. We're either not presenting them the right way to get enough people on board. So we win one election cycle. But President Trump only got 4 years to drain the swamp. You can't drain the whole swamp in 4 years.
Yeah.
So you're not even to the point of writing a lot of new stuff. You're just trying to get rid of bad actors. And he got impeached twice. And I mean, look at all the things going through just by trying to take Washington apart, which I think is what Mark is saying. We all want to do that. We've been behind the abolish the IRS movement for over a decade now. We're there ideologically. It's the implementation of it. We have to get
it done. Yeah.
And you cannot just be in charge for a few years to do those things. Right now we have a divided Congress. Look at what happened to us in the midterm elections. We can't just all throw up our hands and say it's because the elections aren't fair. We have to win. We have to be able to win in our country. And we've got to keep people, once they're in charge, keep selling in a positive way our ideas to the American people so that they want to keep you in charge long enough to make the changes that you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, we're always trying, like you said, we're going to try to put together a team of lawyers and media experts who really know what's going on in this world more than even we do, to try to figure out what you can do. What are those regulations? What are those kill switches that can be created and how that can be implemented? And it's an important time to support the work of the ACLJ.
Yeah.
So you can do that.
I do like the comment coming in and saying, I'm feeling more and more Amish.
Oh, yeah.
I get it. I mean, there's a ton of that move.
Yeah, it's an intriguing lifestyle.
To say, what a lot of people do is they're taking like vacations where they're shutting down. It's tough for us to do that because the work that we do, I can't really do that as a
I can't shut everything down. I mean, I went to Amish country. I visited as a tourist.
I don't feel like I'm doing my job for you all, too. I mean, like, we're doing this. The government doesn't shut down.
You can't just
politics. The world doesn't
turn
shut
off.
down.
Yeah, I know.
But it is a nice idea. To at least go to places that are a little less connected, a little less sensory overload when it comes to tech. And I think that's that good part of humanity you want to preserve. We do have this idea of we never really do it, but it's like going back to nature. It's Thoreau. It's all these. It exists because we have that natural urge. We don't want that to be destroyed. We want our kids to be adventurous on Earth and in space as well. Support the work of the ACLJ, aclj.org. Doubly impact your donation. Our mastering challenge this entire month. That's aclj.org. We'll talk to you tomorrow. At the